I did everything right and they indicted me.
And I don't know what the I'm doing. Antifa!
Hello and welcome to the Katie Halper Show. We have a great show for you today. It's a triple threat. We have three different guests. First, we have State Representative Chris Rabb, who is running to represent Pennsylvania's 3rd District. He's running against someone who says that using the word genocide to describe what is happening in Gaza is like using the N-word. Then we have British journalist Sami Hamdi, who was detained by ICE and recently humiliated Islamophobic bigot and failed political candidate Valentina Gomez on Piers Morgan. And then we have Butch Ware, who is the Green Party candidate for the California gubernatorial race, and he updates us on the Democrat Party's latest attempt to prevent him from running. Before we start, as always, please do like the stream. That's a great way to fight back against the algorithmic suppression that shows like this who bring on guests like ours deal with. Please do become a subscriber by hitting subscribe and then pressing the bell. And you'll definitely want to do that because we are almost at 450,000 subscribers, which is very exciting. But also you'll want to do that because we've been doing these additional streams, often with people based in Iran or West Asia, aka the Middle East, parts of Europe. Basically people who live in areas where doing a 7 p.m. stream Eastern Standard Time is not very convenient. So again, so that you don't miss those great interviews, go to subscribe by hitting subscribe and then the bell. And please become Patreon supporters so you can support the show and get bonus content. For this episode, Patreon supporters get full interviews, 2 full interviews. The full interview with Sami and the full interview with Butch. The Sami Patreon-only segment is about the term America First, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, or both, to have people like Tucker Carlson speaking out against what Israel's doing. And my Patreon-only discussion with Butch Ware is very spicy, and we discuss things like Hasan Piker, and he has some really interesting things to say about Hasan Piker, and he invites Hasan Piker to hang out either in a podcast studio or in a gym because they both do the weights. And to get the bonus content and so much more bonus content every week, become Patreons for just $5 a month at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And if you can't swing that, you can become Patreon supporters at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show for $1 a month, which is only $12 a year. And now for our first interview of the night, I'm so excited to speak to Chris Rabb, who is a member of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives representing the 200th District. He's a Democratic Socialist running for Congress in Pennsylvania's 3rd District. He's been endorsed by Pramila Jayapal, AOC, and Summer Lee. And the notorious Hasan Piker is going to join him on the campaign trail this week. Welcome to the show, Chris Rabb.
Good to be on.
Tell me why you are running for Congress.
I'm running because I have an ancestral calling to do so. I'm a family historian and genealogist, so I carry my ancestors with me every day. And I've benefited from a rich history and legacy of freedom fighters. My 4 grandparents were civil rights activists. Their grandparents, many of whom were abolitionists. All 16 of my great-great-grandparents were born in states where slavery was the state law, from as far south as Mississippi to as far north as Manhattan. And they all died free. And that's an important thing. They did not wait for Abraham Lincoln. They did not wait for politicians to save them. They saved themselves. And I'm rooted in that tradition and that history and those values that have led me to serve. And I've been in the Pennsylvania legislature now for 10 years. And now I'm seeking to run for Congress because we need transformational change. If our ancestors, whether of blood or conscience, said, oh, well, maybe we should just have a little slavery, like we would not be where we are. We demanded full equality, and it was a bold, incomprehensible goal. Right. But we were there because we made it happen. We didn't let things happen to us.
Tell us more, now that I know you are a genealogist and a family historian. Tell us more about your relatives.
Well,
nuggets.
Many. I've been doing this for over 30 years. But one of the ancestors, actually, it's my great-grandfather, Alan Rabb, who inherited a business from his father, Jack Rabb, and they set up Rabb's Meat Market in Columbus, Mississippi. It's actually the inspiration of my campaign logo, Rabb's Meat Market. And that business lasted for many decades, and it was passed on to my great-grandfather, and he and his wife, Emma, had 6 sons. Wow. In the early 1900s. And they wanted to make sure that the lives of their 6 sons were materially better than any previous generation. So they said, you know, with the wealth that we've built through this business, we want to create opportunity. And they all chose different paths. And my grandfather chose to be a healer. He went to Fisk Institute, now Fisk University in Tennessee, and went on to become a physician and the first Black anesthesiologist in the state of Kentucky, and then on to a civil rights activist and helped found the Kentucky ACLU, was a board member of the NAACP. And, you know, this is the history, the folks who have made me who I am, who've inspired me to do all of these things out of service. Even though running for Congress was never on my bucket list, I used to work in the U.S. Senate in my 20s for Carol Moseley Braun, and I saw how the sausage was made. I'm like, I don't want any part of that. That's awful. But I've come over time to realize the important distinction between public servants and politicians. Yeah, and they're both elected officials, but politicians serve themselves and moneyed interests, and public servants serve the people and the public good. And that is what I'd like to do in Congress.
Well, it's interesting. You saw how the sausage is made, and now you're kind of making the sausage, which it relates back to the meat market, perhaps.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed.
Circle of your family. Tell us about your political and personal trajectory.
Sure. Well, I'm someone who's used to operating in the belly of the beast without being consumed by that beast. So I went to Yale in the late 80s, and it was a very challenging environment for Black folk. It was this anti-DEI theme was had predecessors. It was multiculturalism, the evil of multiculturalism back then. It was the end of the apartheid movement. It was the destruction of affirmative action. That's when that was becoming really big. And so it's a very hostile place to be a Black person in an elite setting. And I feel that my time there was important because I didn't let that define me or validate my humanity. There's a lot of people who say, oh, you know, I'm an alum of this and that. I like to think that I influenced that institution far more than it influenced me. And understanding how to operate in those environments, because these were institutions that were not made for women, that were not made for people of color, were not even made for working class people. But we have a responsibility to hold those institutions to account and get as much as we can from them and use them to move everyone forward, not just your own, not for your own personal ambition. And I think that's important. So I'm used to being in the belly of the beast. I certainly have been in the belly of the beast for my decade in the largest state legislature in the country, where you think Congress is bad. In Harrisburg, our state capital, lobbyists could buy me a summer house and it's legal, right? As long as we report it. And donors could cut me $1 million check, and that's okay. There are no campaign contributions, and it is just legalized corruption and bribery. So I've never taken a dime of corporate PAC money. I've not been insinuated into that environment because I want to remain the public servant so that people know that when I speak, when I legislate, when I provide constituent services, that I am accountable to the folks who put me in office. And that's 70,000 bosses right here in Northwest Philadelphia.
Right. And tell us about your platform and how it differs from the people you're running against and who the people you are running against are.
Well, I can't say I know the platforms of my opponents. I'm not even sure what's up on their websites and how their candidacies are promoted is often by folks who are not directly connected to their campaigns. So I can talk about mine. It's, not surprisingly in this moment, it's affordability, fighting fascism, and taxing the ultra wealthy, right? That's how we're going to do all of these things. And we've done it before. We got to do it again. So I'm running as an unapologetic progressive. I'm running as a democratic socialist. I'm running as someone who is deeply anti-establishment. And there's two kinds of folks who are anti-establishment. And I think it's a really important distinction. There are those folks who may be fairly ambitious, who are not being embraced by the establishment for whatever reason, legitimate or otherwise, and they're upset that they can't join the clubhouse. And then there's folks like me who want to burn the clubhouse down. I do not believe in concentrated power. I believe that we must diffuse power. And that has been the basis of all of my campaigns. I've run grassroots campaigns because I do not have access to insiders, nor choose to leverage those that I do, because I run people-powered campaigns against a very powerful democratic machine that does not want me to succeed, because I don't kiss rings, I'm not a rubber stamp, and my politics are way too left for them. And as a result, I've had to fight nonstop for a decade, and I've won 3 contested races against the very powerful political machine here that is supporting one of my opponents. And then a major super PAC that's dumped over $2 million into this race is backing my other opponent, who recently moved back into the district. Okay.
And so your other opponents are Dr. Ala Stanford and Sharif Street. I know that you are above the fray. You're not, you don't smear anyone, or you don't use ad hominem, but just tell us about who they are a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. So Senator Sharif Street is a state senator. He's been in office the same amount of time as I have. He came into office, I believe, without any, his predecessor retired, and he took that spot. I don't think it was a contested race. He has run multiple races before, and has lost all of those contested races for other positions or withdrew. Most notably, he was a candidate for U.S. Senate in the Democratic primary where John Fetterman won, but he never announced. So he raised a bunch of money and spent a bunch of money, but never actually announced. So he was not on the ballot. He is the darling of the Democratic establishment. His father was mayor for 8 years. He's very close with the party boss, former Congressman Bob Brady, who's run the Philly City Committee, the Democratic City Committee, since 1988, I believe, and has all the major insider endorsements from the politicians and politicos who are part of the establishment. And I love that because that lets you know who he is politically, not as a full human being, but as a candidate and as a an elected. The other opponent is Dr. Ala Stanford, who's never run for anything, moved to Philadelphia a few months ago. And her claim to fame is she is a pediatric surgeon who was very involved in getting folks vaccinated and tested during the pandemic, when the city of Philadelphia really did not do what it should do under a previous mayor. And that's essentially the centerpiece of her candidacy, is like, this is what I did as a private citizen. But in terms of where she stands on issues and policies, I have not seen anything that she's said before being a candidate in office. Long before I was a state lawmaker, I had strong opinions that I published as a political blogger, writing op-eds, writing a book in 2010. So she's a political newcomer and an outsider, but someone who was endorsed by the current congressman who is retiring in November, who has been in office for almost 50 years.
Wow. And you say that you don't know a lot about her positions because she's not been that clear about what some of them are, but she did make some interesting comments about genocide, where she said that she basically said she didn't like the term. She said, I know when you use the G word, and that, of course, this is in the context of Gaza. She said, I know when you use the G word, how hurtful it is to a group of people. It's like someone saying the N word around me. So what are your thoughts on that analogy?
It is a baffling and insulting and incredulous statement. It's hard for me to process this as on so many levels.
Right.
Like I don't know how to process it, but I think the bigger issue is why she's doing this kind of verbal gymnastics.
Right.
She can't say genocide because of who funds her campaign.
And who does fund her campaign? Tell us about that.
Well, she has over $2 million that is doing the bulk of her work because she's not doing call time. She has very few donors. The donors she does have are significant donors. So she's not reaching out to regular people who may care about this issue like so many people do. And so this super PAC has AIPAC connections. She also there's been independent reporting about how AIPAC is funneling money through major donors to her campaign. She's denied that, but I don't know if she can continue to deny it now that it has been affirmed and through investigative reporting. I have not spent time on this issue because I have my own campaign to run and I don't need to push anyone down to lift myself up.
Okay,
but
right.
We have very different opinions on this issue. But I think what she's trying to say is that this is controversial, so we shouldn't bring it up because people are going to be upset. But here's the thing. You need a troublemaker in troubled times. You need someone to speak truth to power that needs to be followed up by substantive legislation. And you need to have moral clarity on issues that people deeply care about. When I'm on the campaign trail, particularly when I'm talking to young people who have no idea who I am until that moment, one of the first questions they ask me is, where are you on Gaza? Where are you on Palestine? And it's not that it's the most important issue to them, right? Because affordability is almost always the thing that, is on people's hearts and minds. It's depending on how he answers this question, I'm going to know if he's full of shit or not.
Right.
Right. And so I say, well, I believe there's an active ongoing genocide in Gaza, period. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they go down and say, well, where are you on ICE? I said, well, we have to start with abolishing ICE, but we also have to dismantle the immigrant concentration camps that should have never existed. And they predate Donald Trump.
Right.
And so there's bipartisan complicity in this. Right. And they're like, oh, okay. Well, do you take corporate PAC money? I'm like, I've never taken corporate PAC money. And I've been in office for a decade. They're like, oh, okay. And then they look me up on Instagram. That's normally how it goes. But in these candidate forums, of which we've had probably over 40, because this is the first time in 35 years that there's no incumbent on the ballot. So 13 people was at the high mark of Democrats who were running for this seat. Now it's dwindled down to 4 and really just 3 main candidates. Everyone is paying attention and increasingly people are getting involved and they really want to know what separates us. And so when the issue of Gaza comes up, I'm the only one who mentions genocide because my other opponent, Senator Street, also has support from AIPAC. He's not taking direct money from AIPAC because AIPAC is smart enough to know that their brand is trash. Right. This is why they create these intermediaries. You can also get money from people who give to you, but who are also large donors to AIPAC. So you're AIPAC adjacent. That's the only reason he's not saying genocide. Of course he believes it's a genocide. He's a smart guy. And he's very connected to the Muslim community in Philadelphia. He's Muslim. So it's not like he's clueless. It's just a political calculation because his money will dry up because he's only getting money from political insiders. Neither of my opponents have a grassroots campaign. I have 5 times more Philly donors than both of them combined. I have 7 times more donors, small donors, than both of them combined. They're only going to insiders. And I'm being supported by regular people. My biggest donor is my mommy.
Nice. Good job. Good job, Mom. And good job to you for being a good enough son to get funded by his mom. Whose campaign will get somewhat funded by his mom. And just for some context, so DropSite reported that Dr. Stanford is being funded by a super PAC named 314 Action Fund, and that's received donations from a group AIPAC has used to secretly funnel money into other candidates' campaigns before, the Kimbark Foundation. But, I find the comparison of the word genocide to the N-word to be such a cynical weaponization of identity politics and the exact opposite of what it should be, right? I mean, to try to kind of smear people who use the word genocide as racists. I mean, that's essentially what it's doing. And that is just so disgusting. But because, of course, one of the only ways that you can not see this as a genocide or not speak out against what's happening in Gaza is if you are a racist or some kind of supremacist, or see a certain group of people as subhuman or deserving genocide. So it reminds me of when Hillary Clinton, famously said, "Will breaking up the banks and sexism, racism?" No, not as an egregious example as what Dr. Stanford did, but the similar thing where you're pitting these people against each other. And first of all, breaking up the banks, and this was her attempt to smear Bernie. He never said it would end racism, but we also can't pretend that the housing crisis was not a racialized crisis. And we can't pretend that those things are unrelated. So then you just wind up exposing how little you actually understand these things. And, she loved to pretend she was an intersectionalist. Right. And, well, if you're an intersectional feminist, then you'd probably support, raising the minimum wage, given that the majority of minimum wage earners are women of color.
That's right.
So just another example of how it's really actually quite repulsive. But I want to show a clip of Dr. Stanford being confronted about not saying genocide at a recent candidate forum. And this is not the whole clip because it's a pretty long clip. And you did say, you were there obviously, and you told people to let her speak. So you were very respectful. And which I think is actually important because then it really lets the policies come to the surface.
I thought I had to say something because, look, we can disagree on policy, but, when there are racial and gender dynamics at play, I'm very sensitive to that.
Yeah.
My biggest influences are Black women. They molded me. And there's a way of doing this that focuses on policy and not disrespects the individual. So I felt important that I speak up in that moment.
Yeah. So here it is.
The genocide, Dr. Stanford. Can you say that word? Genocide? Genocide. It's happened. It's documented. You can say it.
Can you let her speak?
Relax. Oh, I can't relax when this lady told me ask about the genocide.
It's not your forum.
It's everybody's forum.
I know, but it's not yours. Relax. Let her talk. That's why she's here.
I can say genocide if you'd like me to say it.
Say
It's harmful. I just did, love. I just
SK Israel
did.
committed a genocide in Palestine.
When I made the statement I made, it was because for those who have been.
And I think she means the statement I made where she compared using the word genocide to using the N-word, right?
We've done so many forums, I believe that's the case.
Yeah.
Made the statement I made, it was because for those who have been a victim of a genocide, whose families are still suffering, it's hurtful to them. For Israelis who have been accused of committing it, it's hurtful for them. I am not, excuse me.
Time's up.
Listen, I respectfully, I have only given. All I have ever done is to give. It's selfless. And I apologize if I hurt you. And I apologize if I hurt you. But just know that it came from a place of not wanting to hurt anyone. And that is sincere.
I appreciate not wanting to hurt anyone, obviously. But, I mean, come on. To compare the pain of undergoing a genocide to the pain of being called out for committing a genocide is really not an appropriate comparison. I mean, that's a really hurtful thing to say to the people who are being killed in Gaza and killed in the West Bank and killed in Lebanon, and killed in Iran. I mean, it's really shows, I think, such a lack of understanding or a real cynical misrepresentation of reality. So that was kind of stunning.
In these moments when folks are trying to differentiate between us as candidates, now everyone is about abolishing ICE, for instance. And so how do people know who's really legit? And long before Abolish ICE became a thing, I actually introduced legislation, anti-ICE legislation, months after I took office in 2017. I went to a Berks County Detention Center and demanded that the then Democratic governor shut it down. He didn't. There were very few Democrats who spoke up then. I went to Moshannon Federal Immigrant Facility a few months ago. I've helped people in sanctuary, families in sanctuary, even escorting their kids to public school for fear that ICE would grab them up. I did that because they trusted me because of what I had done, not just from what I said. I didn't think I would ever run for Congress. I didn't need to take a poll or figure out what was controversial. I did it because it was the right thing to do, to stand up for our neighbors. I can't be free until you're free, right? And so that is the basis of my candidacy and my service. So now we're at a point where we have candidates who on paper are saying the same things with notable exceptions, like the genocide, but they're currying favor for people who don't know how to dig deeper than the slogan or the very, surface level platform. And that's important, putting in the work. I didn't need to run for Congress to show up at rallies, to write op-eds, to do things. I was a committee person, which is a tiny little elected official for the Democratic Party, where we let people know about upcoming elections. I did that for 18 years. This is the work. I would never think of just saying, oh, I'm smart, I'm just going to run for Congress, without any kind of understanding of policy, any understanding of anything beyond your own narrative that you feel is substantive enough to, change hearts and minds. And, everyone has a right to run, but you don't have a right to win. And I'm going to let the people decide on May 19th.
Well, I do want to go back to one more video of you, and this is you at another candidate forum, and you're speaking to Senator Street, and you ask him about the AIPAC, basically, AIPAC shells, and the position on taking money from these groups. So let's take a look at this.
Knowing that 4 of your biggest donors gave to pro-Iran war groups like AIPAC and UDP, the latter which funneled millions of dollars to 314 Action, which is supporting Dr. Stanford's campaign, do you regret taking their money, and will you immediately renounce and refund their individual donations?
So I'm not sure which donors he's talking about. I don't keep track of who everybody else gives to. I will say I do support disclosure, full disclosure in campaign finance. I will vote in that way for that legislation. So I don't know which donors he's talking about, nor do I know that the veracity of that statement is accurate. And I want to say something else, listen. This was not where I was planning to go with any of this. But Rev, you've attacked Jewish donors consistently because they support me. And look, I'm not happy that 314 is putting so much money. Listen, I'm not happy that 314 is giving so much money to Dr. Stanford, but there's no evidence that she has any ties to AIPAC either. And so both of us are now being attacked. Which is it? Is it she's in the pocket of the Jewish donors? Am I in the pocket of AIPAC? You keep attacking, you keep throwing conspiracy theories out there, and it is inconsistent. It is reminiscent of anti-Semitism for you to consistently say, take donors and make mass attacks that you have no evidence for whatsoever at all.
We're at time. Well, I just want to say that it is deeply problematic that you're tying this to Jewish people. Because I did.
You have.
Wait, hold on. Tell me. No, that's not true.
But
I have not.
You have. You put out this on the internet. You've been doing this consistently. You have. And I'm tired. And now you're doing it to her.
At this
and
point,
it's wrong.
This is disingenuous.
It's not disingenuous. Because you're doing the same thing to her you're trying to do to me.
At this point, we're going to move on. At this point, we're going to move on.
Okay, so what is your response to that, especially since it was cut off? So I would like to hear it.
Well, I love what's happened since, because now Senator Street's campaign is loving all of this investigative reporting that proves the connections to AIPAC and AIPAC donors to his main opponent. Like, he can't win with a strong Stanford. So, he's loving this because nothing has been tied to him yet. And this is not connected to Jewish people. This is connected to people who share AIPAC's values, which also include white Christian nationalists, right? So this is political. This is not ethnic. And I should say that I've represented a very active Jewish population for 10 years here in Northwest Philly. And I have this amazing group, self-organized, called Jews for Rabb, which, a bunch of lefty Jewish folk, rabbis and other folks that I'm very proud. And they do not
rabbis for Rabb.
Rabbis for Rabb, pretty much. Yes. And, so and I probably have more Jewish donors than all of my, opponents combined. So it is a very problematic conflation of pro AIPAC stances and Jewish people when we see the polling, right? And also, so there's that. So it was a conspiracy theory then for him, but now he's all on board because all of this has been documented. I don't need to lie or exaggerate about my own accomplishments or about the misdeeds of others to make my points. All of this is independently documented. And yes, AIPAC can support multiple folks. And as we get closer to election day, it may choose to just focus on one, or just more likely come out against me to weaken my candidacy, which is not uncommon. But all of these things were documented there. If the moderator had just referenced it, this would be a non-issue. But there have never been any allegations of anti-Semitism other than me wearing a Free Palestine shirt, Katie. And I've been accused of being an anti-Semite. And I want to mention that because as a Black progressive public figure, and I had this when I was a blogger many years ago, and certainly now being in elective office for 10 years, there's a double standard. Just like, oh, you need to rebuke this and you can't be on this show and that show, when Bernie Sanders can be on Joe Rogan, right? If Pete Buttigieg can be on Fox News all the time. Fox News is a racist media outlet. Its business model is racism, right? But you can still meet people using those platforms. Like if we have a purity test, there's very few people left in a media landscape, as you well know, is dominated by 5 tech bros and Wall Street. So of course I'm going to try to meet people where they are and get access to folks without affirming things that they may say that I don't agree with. And that's true anywhere. The things that I'm most proud of legislatively, I've worked with deeply problematic, Republicans. We can agree on the things that we agree on that can help people. And that's how I've been effective. And that's what people want in Congress. They don't want ideologues. I don't need to only work with progressives. I'm going to work with everybody in good faith. And so those kind of aspersions, I think, distract us from the real work and what people really care about. But everything that Senator Street said then has been disproved in the following weeks and has benefited his campaign.
Right. And, as a Jew, I will say it's anti-Semitic. It's disgusting to watch people claim that it's anti-Semitic to wear a Free Palestine shirt, but it's also anti-Semitic to claim that, because then you're saying all Jews are a monolith who support Israel. And as Israel is like live streaming a genocide, I mean, what could make it worse for Jews if you care about Jewish safety? It's not the priority. Jewish safety is not the priority, but it's just ironic that all these people who claim to care about anti-Semitism and Jewish safety are doing things that will make the world less safe for Jews.
Exactly. And after the Tree of Life massacre in Pittsburgh.
Which actually is anti-Semitism and not about Zionism.
Right. But the other piece that people don't understand about the motivation of that bigot, that awful, awful human being, was he targeted a specific set of Jewish people. And these were Jewish people who were connected to HIAS, which is a great organization that helped largely black and brown refugees come to our country. So the fact that they were already bad because they were Jewish, according to this white
Right, of
supremacist,
course.
right? But they were so much worse because they found common cause with people of color and immigrants, and that infuriated him. So the fact that they were using their Jewish faith in service of, social justice, tikkun olam, right, made them even more of a target. And those are the folks who see in my candidacy a shared history and set of values that transcend all these other distractions and monolithic portrayals of people. That's really kind of important here, because there is no black vote. We are not a monolith in our community either. And the more we push these tropes, the more we make it easier for the bigots to win and to distract us from the things that bring us together. And that's what I'm interested in.
Right. Yeah, that's a really important point. And you had all these, the Black Jewish connection in the civil rights movement. Obviously, there's been a lot written about this, and there've been some like flattenings and oversimplifications. But obviously, that is a heritage and a culture and a history that is at the opposite end of the moral spectrum from Zionism, I would say, or for Jewish support of Israel. And again, that is representing Jews as this monolith who support Israel is also like spitting in the face of this progressive Jewish history that, we saw on display at that Tree of Life, for instance. It's funny how like anti-Semites in this weird way, like anti-Semites understand this progressive Jewish history in a way that others don't, because they hate that. And so you have like the progressive Jews and the anti-Semites who have a shared knowledge. But it makes sense because one group like participates in that history and in that culture and in those values, and the other one observes those values and can't stand it. And,
and it's so interesting. I grew up hearing my dad, who was a Black man who grew up in Jim Crow, Kentucky during the Great Depression, speak Yiddish. And I thought that was normal, right? Because it's my dad, this is my home. And I found out years later, the reason he used so many Yiddish terms was because when he desegregated the University of Louisville med school, the only white people who would talk to him were Jews.
Right. Yeah.
And because he was from Louisville, his parents, my grandparents, would invite his friends over and feed them. So there's a great picture of him with all of his Jewish buddies and one other Black guy who eventually came in the University of Louisville. And they stayed friends for the rest of his life. And when we, like you mentioned, we flatten things. There is a dimensionality and a nuance here and a shared history that we have to understand. And we also have to acknowledge tensions that exist as well. But what's going to happen between now and May 19th is I'm going to be portrayed by right-wing and establishment interests as a raging anti-Semite, right? And that's what they do, particularly Black progressives, because somehow there's a trope that Black progressives cannot abide Jewish people. And it's absurd because some of our greatest allies on the left were Jewish people, and were connected to socialism and communism and all of these things that are far to the left of what happened during the civil rights movement.
Right. Exactly.
And that is a rich tradition that we have to lift up. And I'm really proud of that. And it is in that tradition that I'm running this type of campaign and seeking to serve in the ways that I do. And I understand that my position is going to be weaponized, on Gaza. And this is so much bigger than Netanyahu. I think now folks are like, oh, we'll put all the blame on Netanyahu and everything will go away. Just like so many Democrats are putting everything on Trump.
Exactly. Right.
But there's bipartisan complicity, and I'm running in the Democratic primary. So it is in this moment where we need to hold our own party to account. And after winning the Democratic primary, we can refocus and talk about winning together without pushing aside tensions that still have to be resolved. But this is the Democratic primary. So I'm pushing against my own party and saying, we have to take our hits. We have to understand how we can improve, how not to ignore the base, most notably Black women, because they are the last bastion of loyalists to the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party has not delivered for Black women and also young people. I've never had this level of affirmation and support and care and involvement from young people, basically 35 and younger. It has been extraordinary. And I believe on election day, young people will decide who is the next member of Congress in Philadelphia.
And can you talk about the groups that you refer to in that question to Senator Street? You say pro-Iran groups. Tell us about those groups, and also tell us about 314.
Sure. Well, I mean, when I say pro-Iran groups, I'm talking about
Iran war. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Exactly. Iran war. Very anti-Iran, but pro-Iran war. I mean, AIPAC put out a tweet thanking Donald Trump for bombing civilians. So it's clear that's not a conspiracy theory. They tweeted it. AIPAC is pro-war. They're pro-Netanyahu. They're pro-genocide. They're pro all of those things. And so you got to, if you can't name the beast, you can't kill it, right? So all the Democrats are talking about how it's a senseless war, we shouldn't be there, yada, 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 but they're not connecting the dots, right? Because they're benefiting from folks who want the war and funneling a lot of money. And again, that's all independently verified. These are not rumors. DropSite did this, Ryan Grimm in particular, in Intercept, et cetera, et cetera. So this is well documented. One of the intermediaries that funneled money to 314 Action, which has been helping Dr. Stanford, the group is called United Democracy Project, that is fully funded by AIPAC and gave over $1 million back in 2024. So these are organizations that exist and are created largely leading up to primaries where they're trying to, influence the results of a given election, particularly Democratic primaries.
Right. And of course, they were pivotal in getting rid of Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, as we all know. I mean, AIPAC was not 314, but now that AIPAC is unpopular, they're acting even more and more through intermediaries. And
yes, and also just real quick, if I may, 314 Action on paper is about supporting more candidates with STEM backgrounds, which is a good thing, right? On paper. But the reality is none of the 6 Democratic members of Congress who they endorsed are on the Medicare for All bill as co-sponsors. Not a one, Katie, not a one. So I was endorsed by Congresswoman Jayapal. And Medicare for All is a really important issue and bill that I'm all in for. No other candidate has said consistently or clearly that they would also co-sponsor the Medicare for All bill. And I also believe that has a lot to do with where they get their money. And people need to know that.
So tell us about your policies, and especially when it comes to, for instance, Gaza, ICE, the death penalty, and we're going to ask you about some recent legislation you worked on with that. But tell people about your more nuts and bolts policies.
Yeah. So let's start with ICE. As I said before, the entity itself has been problematic long before Trump. It is far worsened under this second administration for sure. So the idea of abolishing ICE is clearly resonating in light of what people are seeing, the most egregious things, but those are more symptoms to a larger issue, right? The structural issue of what has happened since 9/11, right? In fact, with the Patriot Act and so forth, we have all of these things that have weaponized anti-immigrant thought and policy. Even in Pennsylvania, you can't get a driver's license, if you're not a citizen. That was not the case before 9/11. And there's no reason that someone who's here shouldn't be able to get a license, because they're going to drive anyway, and they make everyone less safe because they can't get car insurance if you don't have a license, right? All of these things, the radiant effect of these very anti-immigrant, xenophobic policies since 9/11 have negatively impacted everything and have been embraced by Democrats as well. And so just the very creation of immigrant detention centers it's a false flag. We don't need to detain them. We know where they are. And in fact, it's not a criminal offense to show up without documentation. There's room and entryways for asylees and refugees we need an infrastructure that's not carceral in nature, but is administrative and provides wraparound services to provide shelter and access to things that everyone needs who come in, whether they're a citizen or not. Like that everyone needs to be protected. And there's legislation already in Congress that moves to that. So beyond the slogans, there are members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus who have substantive legislation that I would certainly co-sponsor. So that's the other thing about it. Joining the squad, joining the Congressional Progressive Caucus, joining left-leaning nerds in Congress is an important thing, because the things that people want, the disaffected Democrats, the young folk, progressives, Black folk, other folks, they want to see how we're going to push the Democratic Party, particularly when we take back the House in November. How are we going to move forward in terms of substantiating the slogans? And the great thing about these progressives already in Congress is they're doing heavy lifting. They're introducing really substantive legislation that can move. So part of the reason I'm excited about going to Congress is not only do I look forward to being in a new Democratic majority, but being part of a growing and powerful subset of progressive lawmakers who are going to push our party forward and the majority forward to move on the substantive bills that, aren't moving under a Republican majority, but can move in a new Democratic majority, because these are the things that connect the sentiments on the ground to the slogans, to the feelings, to the actual policy that are going to improve the lives of people who are not pleased with our party. So getting the endorsement of Congresswoman Jayapal is great. But it's even greater that she is also the author of the Medicare for All bill in the House, right? So it's not just random folks, it's people who are connected to substantive and comprehensive policies. They're going to move us forward, right? The same with, so my stance on Palestine is connected to legislation like Block the Bombs Act, right? And other specific pieces of legislation that I can add my name to. I can be a public advocate and proudly vote for those bills should they come up on the House floor. These things have to be connected, because I will only be one of 435 members. And so I can't do these things alone. I'm doing them, collectively with folks who share my values around the country, because my policies are not just going to impact my district and my city. It's going to impact the nation and the world. So that's what really inspires me with regard to my platform and my advocacy as a candidate and a prospective member of Congress.
Okay, lightning round questions, because I know you have to go through it. So what do you say to people who say, oh, the Democratic Party is corrupt? It's too... once you get to Congress, if you do get to Congress, you're going to be part of the Democratic machine, which means you'll be part of the corporate duopoly. Why aren't you running independent? That's one question. What do you say to people who are going to criticize you for appearing with Hasan Piker? And that's very exciting, by the way, not to give away my own perspective on this. Tell us about what's happening down the pike very soon with Hasan Piker and death penalty, recent death penalty legislation.
Sure. Well, just yesterday, my bill to repeal the death penalty passed out of the Judiciary Committee in Harrisburg, our state capital. It's the 5th time I introduced this bill, and it is a time when perhaps this bill can come up on the House floor where it will get bipartisan support. We have a Republican-controlled state Senate, so it probably will not move there, although there's at least one or two Republicans who would probably vote for it, and we have a governor who would sign it into law should it get through there. But even if it doesn't, that means in the next legislative term, if we take back the Senate and we expand our numbers in the House, we would have a blue trifecta, and that could happen. So it doesn't need to have my name on it. I just want to be a part of the long tradition of fighting against this awful policy. So that's the death penalty. With regard to what was the second thing?
Hasan and then why you're not running independent.
Oh, yes. Well, I can't serve
or whatever.
Yeah, I can't serve if I can't win. Right. So if you want me to do the work, with authenticity and care and integrity, I have to work within the system that we have. Just like if you're a union worker at Amazon, you don't like Amazon, you don't leave Amazon to then unionize. You have to unionize within the corporation and work within, while we also have folks on the outside to combat the predatory business model of greedy corporations, right? So we have to have folks on the inside and folks on the outside. And there are folks on the inside who are not corruptible. Not enough, but they exist. I think Bernie's a great example. There are any number of folks who have remained true to their principles while working within the belly of the beast without being consumed by that beast. And because I have a 10-year track record, no one can compare me to Fetterman, right? That's the big F word in Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's worried about someone becoming the next Fetterman, but he did not have a track record. I have thousands of votes I've taken over a decade. I have hundreds of bills I've introduced. I have hundreds upon hundreds of bills that I've co-sponsored. So anyone who has any concern about what I do in Congress can see what I've done in the past 10 years in the nation's largest full-time state legislature. And with regard to Hasan Piker, again, do these same people who have a problem with that, do they not want me on Bill Maher? Do they not want me on Fox News or CNN? Do they not want me? Look, NBC was co-owned, was by General Electric, which is one of the biggest, which is one of the biggest defense contractors in the world. Should I not ever go on MS Now or MSNBC before that? Like, where's the line? And ultimately, if we believe that the Democratic Party, largely because of corporate interests, does not meet people where they are, who would be most impacted by the best policies that they promote, but we don't reach people where they are, what do they want from us? Like, I have to reach people where they are. I don't have to say, I agree with everything that Hasan Piker says. In fact, I don't know much of what he said. I'm new to Hasan Piker world. You know, my Gen Z sons are very thrilled. They're like, Dad, this is a huge deal. I'm like, okay. And I'm looking forward to talking with them. And we're going to talk about what we agree on. And that will largely revolve around attacking the billionaire class, endless war, Gaza, etc.
Right. Yeah. And the things that he gets attacked for are things that are actually good. I mean, they're, you know, his position on Gaza. And then last question. Okay, really quickly. How does your abolitionist family heritage and your family's commitment to fighting racism relate to your position and work on Palestine?
I mean, in so many ways. I mean, the rich tradition of Black radical thought and its connection to other oppressed groups is well documented and long standing. So I am not the first. I am one of many over generations who understand that this is about collective liberation and fighting systems of harm. But even long before that, my great-great-great-grandfather, Reverend Amos Noah Freeman, came to Philadelphia to fight with the folks in the Philadelphia Vigilance Committee. These were Black and white abolitionists in the 1830s, 40s, and 50s. And the place where they met, Benazet Hall on 7th and Lombard, it's in the district. So my ancestor was fighting for racial justice nearly 200 years ago. I'm carrying on that tradition, that these ancestors of blood and conscience have inspired me in this moment to help the next generation. There's an unbroken bond between the past, the present, and the future. And I take that very seriously. I carry my ancestors with me every day.
And the Free Palestine element of it.
Well, I mean, who can better understand the plight of Palestinians than African Americans? So many of the things that have been used to oppress Palestinians were learned by folks who looked at U.S. history, right? So when people are calling ICE the Gestapo, that is not a good reference point, because the Gestapo looked at Jim Crow America and slavery. Same with apartheid. All of the things that were weaponized against oppressed people were perfected in the United States and modeled elsewhere. So if anyone can find common cause with the Palestinian people, it's African Americans, not to the exclusion of others. We also have to talk about our indigenous brothers and sisters and siblings as well. I say this, this is a nation born on stolen land and stolen labor, and we cannot move forward until we acknowledge that and we address it. We have to see that our causes are overlapping, our histories are shared, and we have an intertwined destiny.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Rep. Rabb, and I look forward to speaking to you again when you are have been voted in as the next member of Congress.
Thank you so much, Katie. I appreciate
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.
That was a great discussion. And you can find out more about Chris and how to get involved in his campaign, even if you don't live in Pennsylvania, at chrisrabb.com. That's CHRISRABB.com. And if you haven't already, please do like the stream and subscribe to the stream and become Patreon supporters at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And now I speak to Sami Hamdi. So excited to be joined by Sami Hamdi, who is a British journalist, commentator, and managing director of the International Interest, a global risk and intelligence company. Welcome, Sami.
Thanks for having me, Katie. Appreciate it.
Of course. You do such important work, and like many people, sadly, who do important work and make important points and speak about Palestine, you were punished for that. You were actually detained by ICE, and we're going to get into that. But I thought it'd be interesting to actually talk about a recent appearance that you made on Piers Morgan, which went kind of viral because you did something that I think a lot of people want to do and wish they had done. I've been on Piers Morgan twice, and I'm definitely going to do this the next time, which is that you really came with the receipts during an appearance with Valentina Gomez. Before we watch this video, can you set up how this even unfolded?
So I was told, so Valentina Gomez applied for a visa to come and join this far-right rally here in the United Kingdom. We have this sort of rise in far-right sentiment with the Reform Party. They held a rally, 100,000 people turned up in London a few months back, and they're trying just before these local elections to rally support in the belief they might take some seats. Right now it appears it's a battle between the Green Party and the Reform. So she was supposed to come and speak at this event, and her visa was approved. Then a campaign took place here from local activists, and her visa was removed, and it seems she reached out to Piers Morgan and asked to be able to speak on the Piers Morgan show. So I get a text message that says, do you want to come on and speak, with Valentina Gomez about the issue of Islamophobia and her visa being revoked? And I hesitated slightly only because I weighed between giving oxygen to these kind of views and addressing them. So I went to see my father, who's 2 doors down, and I went and told him, what's your opinion? He said, son, if you're going to go, make sure you bring the fact, go and print them. Go to the National Statistics website and go and print it. And I actually said to him, Dad, why would I print it? That's really going overboard and, and whatever. He said, you can predict what she's going to say. She's going to say Muslims are rapists. She's going to say Muslims are this. Have the facts, because it's so horrible that they spread these ideas when the facts clearly show something different. Right. So I walked out of the house telling him, I'm not going to do it. I went home. I stood in the living room where I am here, and I said, maybe he's got a point. So I went to the National Statistics, and I couldn't find specific stats for the ethnicity of those who commit the perpetrators. What I did find on the National Statistics was the claims of the victims, who were saying that the perpetrators, more than 80% of victims were saying that the perpetrators were the people that they knew. It was either family members, it was either friends, acquaintances, meaning when somebody is claiming that white English girls are being raped and the like, these same victims are saying that it's somebody we know, i.e. it would be, if we're thinking logically, somebody from. So then I thought, okay, this is a very interesting statistic. And then it took me ages to put it into a proper graph, and maybe they should have been bigger and the like. Then I thought, let me go more and see what the population of the Muslims actually are, because she's likely going to say there's a takeover of Muslims. Then let's look at the population of the incarceration. But I had UK data. And I thought, she's in the US. We can apply this to the US data as well. So I thought, you guys are quite famous or infamous for mass shootings at schools. It's something that we in the UK were always like, that's why we don't allow guns, for people, and because this stuff happens. So then I found it's overwhelmingly white shooters. I'm not saying that this is a white problem. What I wanted to demonstrate was you've clearly skewed the facts.
Right.
I knew there'd be an opportunity to say it. The question was, waiting, when is the opportune time to actually say it? And when I saw her face as I presented statistics, I'll be very honest with you, Katie, I didn't feel any sense of vindication I felt quite sorry. Like, her mouth dropped, her face looked a bit stunned. And I actually asked my father before I went on, I told him, what if she comes very aggressive and attacks with that venom that she has? And he said to me, son, I've done my research into it. She's 20 something years old. She probably grew up in an environment of hate. She's probably been fed the wrong information. Obliterate the facts, but give her an opening in order to, to consider. And I don't necessarily think it landed, the idea of, Valentina, open your eyes a little bit, don't. But at the same time, I do think that when I look at what's happening in the US, in the UK, around the world on the issue of Palestine, with people seeing the videos and the images with their own eyes and the extraordinary shift in public opinion. I remember, Katie, I was in California, and I think it was in San Diego. I was giving a talk. And on the right side it was a room of about 800, 900 people. On the right side, there are 3-4 tables of all white Americans. So I looked and I thought, I don't know, FBI, Homeland Security, CIA, who could these people be, whatever. So I gave the talk as normal. Guys, speak out, raise your voices. People's opinion are changing. At the end of the talk, about 30 of these white Americans, they come and they walk up to me. And this old lady in front speaks on their behalf. Mr. Hamdi, I said, yes. She said, Mr. Hamdi, we just want to let you know we're lifelong Democrat voters. And I said, okay. I was arguing at the time that Democrats need to learn a lesson. You can't just do genocide and get away with it. But Mr. Hamdi, and she starts crying, Katie. She starts crying with tears. She says, Mr. Hamdi, I had no idea what they were doing in Gaza and what they were doing in Palestine. I had no idea that's where my taxpayer money was going. Mr. Hamdi, I can't sleep at night from the images and the videos that I see of these kids with their heads blown off. And I promise you, Mr. Hamdi, I'm lifelong Democrat, but I'm going to punish the Democrats at the ballot box, and I'm going to go vote third party. Now, in that moment, I had been arguing that Democrats should be punished. I said to her, but what about Trump? If you vote third party, maybe it will result in Trump in. And she said this, and I will never forget it. She looks at me and she goes, Mr. Hamdi, we survived 4 years of Trump. We'll survive another 4 years of Trump. But those thousands of Palestinians didn't survive the years of Biden. And Mr. Hamdi, I would rather punish genocide today and fight fascism tomorrow than forgive genocide just because I want to avoid fascism in my own interest. There were these I can see the public opinion is changing. And at the end of the day, I think I was trying less to address Valentina and more to address an audience who, in the midst of that hate, maybe those who came on to cheer on Valentina, it may well be, just as we've seen Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and all these others start to flip. You never know whose heart will flip by seeing the facts put straight in front of them.
Right. Wow, that's fascinating. And that's a whole, I mean, of course, I think what we have with Trump is both fascism and a continuation of genocide with some superficial pauses. But, and we can get into a debate about what happens when we punish the Democrats, because unfortunately, I don't know if that, if they'll learn that lesson. They may learn the lesson, but we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. But I definitely understand. Like, I never did any vote shaming because I wasn't going to judge people who couldn't bring themselves to vote for the lesser evil. And there's a whole debate over whether that's something to be pursued or not. But going back to Valentina Gomez, and that is a fascinating anecdote that you told me, by the way. But going back to Valentina Gomez, just so people know, this is someone, she was actually born in Colombia, in the country of Colombia. And she has unsuccessfully run for office in both Missouri and in Texas, and she ran on an anti-Islam platform. She filmed herself burning a copy of the Quran that was her campaign video. So let's take a look at what you said to her in response to her claims.
Piers, it's just not true. Piers, if you don't mind, can I say something here, Piers? Piers, if you don't mind, can I say?
Yes, I'll bring in Sami Hamdi to respond. Yeah.
Piers, I just want to. So she keeps talking about the idea. She keeps talking about this idea of rapists and the like. Piers, I went to the website of the Office for National Statistics and the Bureau of Justice of the Americans, and here you can see these are all the victims saying who their perpetrators are. And here they say that it's people that they know, it's their family members, it's their friends, it's their acquaintances. Only this small number over here is done by strangers or what she calls grooming gangs. You can see the overwhelming majority are done by those that they know or those or their relatives. Nobody says this is white Christian sexual epidemic. If you look at the population, she says that they're being taken over. This is the population of Muslims in the UK and in the US. In the US, 1.1%, in the UK, 6%. Tell me, where is the takeover that's taking place here? Piers, when you look at the crimes that are committed against Brits, and I'm a Brit, I'm born and raised here, against our sisters and our daughters and the like, here are the crimes committed by Jimmy Savile and Rolf Harris. Nobody says this is white Christian rape. No one says this is a white Christian problem. Everybody says crime has no faith and it has no race. This was committed by vile individuals and justice should be delivered. Piers, when you look at the Office of National Statistics and you see the number of people incarcerated in the UK, you can see that they are overwhelmingly white. But nobody says that this country has a white criminal problem. No one says that this is a Christian problem. Everybody says this is a criminal problem by vile people because crime has no faith and crime has no race. Piers, when you look at the mass shootings in America that kill students and kill their children, this is the data from the Bureau of Justice in America. This is by white shooters, this is by ethnic minorities. No one says that in America they have a white Christian shooting problem because they know crime has no faith, they know crime has no race, and they know that it is individuals who need to be brought to justice.
Wow. So that is pretty hard to fight with. I mean, it's facts don't, as what is it? Trump, what do Trumpers say, or MAGA, facts don't care about your feelings. They say it a little bit more rudely than that. But I thought that was a fascinating exchange. And I want to know also about the way you reached out to her. And this, I guess, is something you, as you just alluded to, your father also encouraged you to do. So that was you bringing the receipts. And then we have a clip of you not shaming her, but actually inviting her to open her eyes to reality. So let's take a look at this clip.
My question for Sami Hamdi is about Valentina Gomez. Would you have allowed her into the UK?
Piers, part of me believes that it would have been good for Valentina to come and see the real Britain. It would have been good for her to come and meet the wonderful giants of Britain who are Muslim, like Timothy Winter in Cambridge, like Paul Williams, like Paul Keeler, like Suhail Hanif. It would have been good for her to see the realities of what Britain is like and how Muslims live in Britain and contribute to society. I believe Valentina is still young. She's in the early stages of what Tucker Carlson was. I'm asking her, skip the years that it takes to figure it out. Go and see what the world looks like. Go and see the reality, because your message of hate didn't work. Abdul Sayed, the Senate candidate for Michigan, a right-winger, turned up in his rally and told him, I'm here as a right-winger. Abdul Sayed put his hand on his heart and said that I am so glad you're here. I'm so glad we can talk with one another. I'm so glad that we're standing together. Marjorie Taylor Greene says this is no longer a battle between left and right. This is a battle for America first. And the final point, Piers, I'll finish on this. Valentina's brother serves in US forces. That Valentina, instead of focusing on the 1% of American Muslims who aren't the problem in America, perhaps she should focus on the 42 million Americans living on SNAP who can't afford basic groceries. She should focus on the servicemen who return to America and sit in the freezing cold and Magnificent Mile in Chicago. She should focus on those ordinary Americans going bankrupt as a result of medical bills. There's a reason she was rejected in Texas, because no one resonates with that hate. There's a reason why she was rejected in Texas, because no one buys the hate anymore. What wins in America, what wins in the UK, the reason Reform lost in Gorton and Denton is because Zach Polanski came with a message of hope. In America, Mamdani came with a message of hope.
And Zach Polanski is the leader of the Green Party in the UK. So that was also influenced, shaped by your father's advice, right?
Yeah, he was very adamant about this particular one, because some people were like, when you go for her, you know, like really rip into her. And my father was just blunt. My father said, listen, always give people room to change. You can see it, that public opinion is changing. And to be honest, I will say something, Katie. So I haven't been to America too many times. The first time I went was in 2018 to attend a wedding for 6 days. And then in the past 2 years, I was going back and forth, giving talks in different universities. I'll be honest with you, Katie, I grew up never wanting to visit America ever. For me, it was the eye of Sauron. You know, it was, you don't go to Mount Doom. You know, it's a place where a lot of evil is manifested across the world. And I remember the first time I went to Washington, D.C., Katie, I was with the friends, and we were looking at the White House. And we were like, don't you think it's wild that in that building over there, a bunch of congressmen can like press a button and slaughter kids around the world and go and bomb these countries? And then they come out the building, get on their bicycles, they go to a nice cafe, they drink that. Washington is so pleasant. DC is such a pleasant place in that regard. It's almost like a dystopia. And when I went back in 2018, I was like, man, I don't need to go to America again. When I went over the past 2 years, I went to every state except New Hampshire. And, you know, you do those long drives. I'm proud to say I drove from California all the way to North Carolina. Not in one go, obviously, but in any case. But as you go, you start to appreciate that it's not a land of evil as much as it is a land in which many people just don't know what's happening in the outside world. They don't know much about what's going on. I used to make a joke to friends. I told them when I take the domestic flights, I used to tell them 1/3 of the plane is watching CNN on the internet. 1/3 of the plane is watching Fox News. And 1/3 is watching Netflix or series or playing, games on their phones and the like, meaning those are the main sources of information where people are going. I would meet people who'd say, I had no idea that we were spending all this money and sending, abroad, and my daughter can't afford her college bills or whatever. You'd meet all these people, and I was very blown away, but I was very stunned by that. I thought this was an intentional population that intends to sow so much discord and chaos. I find many people just genuinely have no idea, and I felt very guilty about that, Katie. I felt deeply guilty. Why? Because I had never once thought that maybe we should do a bit more in communicating with those people. I remember Andrew Yang, I think his name was Andrew Yang.
Yeah.
I remember he ran for the Democrat candidacy in 2020, I think it was.
Yeah.
So they're doing the debate that you guys do. And somebody asked the candidates, if you were in a truck with a Trump supporter driving on the highway, what would you say to that Trump supporter? And everybody's saying, I'd say this, I'd say. And he turned around and said, I wouldn't say anything. I'd listen. I would listen to, which I thought was a very human response. I mean, make of that but the idea being in that the more I went across America, the more I realized why public opinion shifted so dramatically when it came to Palestine, because not only were the images so graphic, but also the sense that the Americans felt that they were hoodwinked, that they'd been lied to, that sense of betrayal, that why wasn't I informed of this before? Why didn't I? Candace Owens said on the Piers Morgan show, I was disgusted with myself that I had never looked into it. Tucker Carlson on his podcast came out and said in 2001, I was told Muslims are the enemies, but now I'm looking into it. Did you know that Islam means surrender to God? And me as a Christian, I can resonate with that. When I'm looking even at the Democrat base, like I mentioned, that lady in San Diego, or even the African-American pastors that I met in Georgia or in North Carolina, who would turn around and say, Mr. Hamdi, we support the Democrats, but we're shocked and horrified they're committing this genocide, and we're doing everything we can to lobby Biden in that regard because we didn't realize this is what was happening. And that's what I mean. It's not just my father telling me, beware, she's a 20-year-old, but also this phenomenon in that now that I got to know America, now that I got to know they're a rather generous bunch. I make a joke with my friends when I came back. One thing you Americans do, which puts me off as a Londoner, is you talk very openly on planes or on transport. So I give you an example. I'll sit on the plane and I'm flying from, let's say, I don't know, Dallas to Seattle. And then the person next to me be like, so where are you going?
Oh, yeah.
And I'll be like, what business is it of yours? I'm going the same place that you're, And are you going for work or pleasure? And I'm like, whoa, like, why? Like, we don't do this. And then she or he will just continue. I'm going for my son's graduation. He just graduated. He just did this. There is a friendliness to them that I discuss, which is why I think with the Valentina approach, I think there is merit in assuming that convey the message first. Don't assume people know what you know. Don't assume people have lived the same experiences that you have. And just as we're seeing now, MAGA saying that Trump betrayed us and sold us a lie, and they're coming to realization, albeit belatedly, the hope is that on both sides, even with the Democrat leadership, maybe if you keep pushing it, the base can convince these ties to shift, so long as we believe in our capabilities in conveying the message and believe in the goodness of people, which is sounds like a fairy tale message, but I think it's a very effective one.
No, yeah, I think that's true. And I do think that with Valentina, she's probably not reachable, which doesn't, because her shtick is being offensive, right? She's not actually good faith. I don't think debating good faith, that doesn't mean it's not effective to speak to her the way that you did, because you're, of course, one of the things that happens in a debate is that you're not just trying to convince the person you're debating, you are doing this in front of others who will see it, and it'll have an effect on those people. But speaking of visiting the United States, tell us about that time that you visited the United States and were detained by ICE. Tell us about how that happened.
So I'd been going back and forth to the US legally on a B1, B2 visa, nothing, talking in different conventions and universities and the like. By trade, I'm a geopolitical risk consultant, so I advise companies a lot about the Middle East. I've even advised the State Department on multiple occasions, something which helped me later on. But in any case, there's a video. The first person who posted it was somebody called Dinesh D'Souza. So Dinesh D'Souza posted a picture. I'd never heard of him before this, but he posted a video of me speaking in Kuala Lumpur. And in this speech in Kuala Lumpur, I was speaking to an audience, and I was very passionately trying to say to them that, guys, listen, I've been to America. They're not an evil people. They are not. At best, if the ones who are espousing the hate, a lot of them are just ignorant. guys, keep speaking, keep talking on social media. There's a reason why they want to shadow ban the accounts. There's a reason why Blinken wants to ban TikTok. There's a reason why keep talking and raising your voice, and you can see people shifting. Tucker, Candace. So Dinesh D'Souza took this tweet and he wrote, jihadi terrorist celebrates the role that Candace Owens is playing in spreading Islam in America. Something along those lines. It was funny because Grok responded and said there's nothing in the video that suggests any of that. Then Ted Cruz shared it, Senator Ted Cruz. When Senator Ted Cruz shared it, this was like on a Friday or a Saturday. The following Monday, enter Laura Loomer.
Oh my God.
So Laura Loomer posts a tweet where she says, there is a lecturer from the UK who's in the US at the moment, going around talking to people, you know, against Israel and the like, and supporting whatever, like hummus and pita bread and stuff. We need to get this guy out of the United States. And I got a message from a friend telling me, don't take Laura Loomer lightly because she has a direct access to the State Department. I said, listen, I'm not doing anything illegal. I haven't done anything wrong. I got my B1, B2 visa, which is 10 years. I won't think too much about it. But I felt something might be coming. On the Wednesday, Laura Loomer tweeted and she said, I'm in Washington and I've met people in Congress. I think it's disgusting the way Muslims wash themselves in the bathroom, you know, to prepare for prayer. And I have good news coming about a certain UK citizen who's in the US right now. And I knew she's talking about me. So anyway, I ignored it. I was in, where was I at the time? Maybe Dallas. And then I went to LA. I gave a talk in LA, then San Francisco. Then I went to Sacramento on the Saturday. And it's funny, on the talk in the Sacramento, I had forgotten I said this. Somebody sent me a recording afterwards. I actually told the audience, this may be the last time I speak to you for a while here in America. I actually said it to the audience. So anyway, in the morning, I wake up late. I'm about to miss my flight. A friend of mine knocks on the door, grabs me. We go to the airport. I check in. I put my baggage. I go through security. I look up. I'm looking for the gate D35 for Tampa. I'm flying from San Francisco, SFO to Tampa. And there's a guy sitting. I don't know how much people know about the airport in SFO, but when you come out security, at least for the domestic, there's like a tree and there's like a mini fountain when you come out. So there's a guy sitting there with one knee up on the other. Stands up, looks at me, Mr. Hamdi, Sami Hamdi. And I was like, and I see the badge he's got here. And I'm thinking, this is it. So I looked and I said, yes. He said, Mr. Hamdi, I'm here to inform you that your visa has been revoked. And I said, what do you mean it's been revoked? I didn't even know it was under review. Here's the memo. So I read the State Department memo. It doesn't say anything. It just says under article this, verse, whatever this, your visa can be revoked, and we've decided to revoke it. And all agents are in capitals are commanded to apprehend this individual wherever they find him. So anyway, I said to the guy, okay, cool, no problem. You know, I love London. You know, I've never thought of leaving it. I'll just go to the London gate and fly home. That's not how this works, he told. And then these 6 agents, they appear from behind me out of nowhere. Then they escort me out. There's a car with tinted windows, like black windows. They throw me in the car. They handcuff me, take me to the most random area, middle of nowhere in McFarland. And then as they're putting us in the facility, I'll never forget, Katie, as they're checking us in. So bear in mind, they've bundled me in a van, driven 2 hours and a half, stopped at this ICE center. They wanted me to sign a confession sheet to say I deserve the visa being revoked. I said no. They said, well, you brought this on yourself. Put me in another van, drove me to a car park for 2 hours. Then they bundled me into another car, drove me for another 2 hours. It was I thought I was going to Guantanamo. But anyway, so they started, you know, we enter McFarland. When they were checking us in and, you know, to give us the clothes to dress up as prisoners in the facility, there's a Mexican guy and an Indian guy in front of me, Katie. And the Mexican guy is trying to be a bit, you know, make a joke out of the whole thing. So he tells the supervisor says to him, where are you from? And he says, Afghanistan, as a joke. And she says, oh, your people want to kill my people. And we're all looking in the queue going like, what? And he's like, no, amigo, me no, Afghanistan, me Mexican. And she's like, your people want to kill my people. So I've gone, excuse me, like, that's just not true. She said, yes, people in that region, they want to kill my people. That's the kind of attitude of the people who are overseeing us. You know, for the next like 2 weeks that I would be there, when they'd come in and they try, you know, power moves or power trips, you know, some of the abuse that some of the other inmates got that they didn't deserve or the like. But during that period, 2 things happened that got me out. And this is what I meant about people raising their voices and speaking out. The first was, I think that Laura Loomer realized that she'd blundered when she got them to arrest me in California as opposed to Florida. Because California, the facility was better than Florida. And also judges are considered more amenable to the detainees than they would have been in Florida. Every inmate told me, bro, you're lucky you were not detained in Florida. You're lucky you were not detained in Texas. They're the worst. And the stories were horrific about Texas and Florida. They wanted to transfer me on the second day, but the federal judge ruled that there was indications my freedom of speech had been violated. So that kept me in California. And then the federal judge ruled a week later, because the Department of Homeland Security were doing something funky in that in the courts, they were just saying that I'd overstayed my visa. Then they changed it to my visa was revoked. There was nothing about terrorism or any of these. But publicly, they kept putting this doctored video and terrorism and whatever. So I was getting really frustrated in that, well, if you're going to accuse, bring it to the court. Why are you? Because they knew it was inadmissible in court. So then an article came out in USA Today that provoked the DHS. They went to the courts and they didn't accuse me of anything. They said the court has no jurisdiction to look into the rights of a foreign alien. That was the argument. The federal judge within 2 hours threw the government case out and said, no, we have the right. And you know what? Just because of this, we're going to expedite his case because we think this is a serious breach of freedom of speech. We're going to look into this case. Then the government came and said, listen, can we just make this go away? And, you know, it seems like some friends in the State Department were like, what idiot listened to Laura Loomer? What fool like picked up her phone call? Sami, look, we can't give you back your visa because, like the media, PR stuff, but we'll clear the whole record. Just go back to the UK, go back, see your family, apply for a visa, come back whenever you want, drop the federal case, and let's just, we've worked together before, we can. I said, dude, you guys are the ones who kept me here. Like, when I flew back, the reason why, and I'll finish on this point, I won't go on too long about it. No. The reason why I wasn't too upset when I got back to the UK, because my friends were all like, sue the government, sue the government, sue the government, is because when I thought about it, and this is talking to my father again and other friends, I was not Laura Loomer's primary target. Think about it this way. Laura Loomer didn't come after me first. Neither did the Israel First lobby. I was the last target. The first target were actually American citizens, talking about changing the First Amendment of freedom of speech, going after American citizens in Michigan who are campaigning for Palestine. The judge, if you look at the court ruling, the judge actually says in Michigan, I have heard that there is foreign influence on the Attorney General that resulted in this case. I want to investigate this first. And the Attorney General drops the case against those citizens. And the judge in Nevada is even more blunt. The judge in Nevada says, am I supposed to understand that an American expressed an opinion, another American didn't like it? This is a land of freedom of speech. What's this nonsense? And he throws the case out. Then they threatened Mehdi Hassan, if you remember, with his naturalization, saying naturalized citizens shouldn't be, and they failed in that. Then they went after Mahmoud Khalil, green card. Let's go after green card holders. Mahmoud Khalil is holding out so far, in the courts, still in the US, not deported yet because the judges are there. The Israel First lobby got frustrated. Oh my God, we got to do something for the sake of Israel. These Americans are speaking out too much about it, and public opinion is shifting. So they went after student visas. They went after Rumaysa Ozturk. They went after Mohsen Mahdawi in Colombia. They went after Liqa Kurdiya. Mohsen Mahdawi walked free. Rumaysa ended up getting released. At this point, if you imagine, and this is how I view it, if you imagine the frustration of Israel First lobby in America, that we're trying to silence these Americans, but for goodness sakes, even under the Trump administration, we're unable to silence them. Then they go for a random UK lecturer who's touring America. They say, let's get him. At least let's find some sort of scout. That's the point. So I view my case in that way, in that it wasn't a manifestation of strength. It was a manifestation of weakness, because later on, I said earlier that I've advised the State Department before. I actually called some friends from the State Department. I said, guys, how could this happen? You guys know me and I know you. And, I've advised US ambassadors in the past. And, they said, look, Sami, to be honest, it shouldn't have happened. But anyway, like your record, we've checked it. It's all clear. You can go back to the US anytime that you want, apply for it. In this case, Israel First lobby failed. And that's why I argue that the attack wasn't on me specifically. It was on ordinary Americans. It's how do we limit the information that reaches Americans? How can we get CBS to be under Barry Weiss so that we can control the information that goes to the Americans? How can we ensure that we can buy Paramount Pictures or whatever, or Warner Brothers and the like, to make sure that Hollywood doesn't rebel and do these little Superman innuendos where it appears like it references the genocide? How can we make sure there is that filter? Why? And this is the point here, Katie. I found, and they came to the same conclusion that I came to in America. I found that when the ordinary American is actually presented with the facts, a lot of them don't actually hold on to their dogmatic opinions. They actually shift. When they're actually shown that Hegseth wants $200 billion for a war in Iran, instead of helping ordinary Americans with their medical bills, their hearts move. Americans see that this is a disgrace. When a hurricane rampages through Florida and Biden gives $8 billion to the Israelis first and $750 initially to the victims of the families in Florida, Americans can see that. They're like, there's something seriously wrong here. When in October 2023, $14 billion is being presented to Congress, and Congress considers it to give to Egypt and Jordan to take in Palestinians to help Israel to ethnically cleanse Gaza, Americans see that and say, well, how can this happen in my country? And I can't, and the heartbreaking thing is this. The reason I use Magnificent Mile always as the example is because that's what shocked me. Magnificent Mile is pretty, Katie. It's a nice part of Chicago. I went to stay in the hotel. Where were we staying? Intercontinental. That's where we were staying. And outside the Intercontinental, you see all these US war veterans. Can you imagine a US war veteran, Katie, flies to the other side of the world, convinced that they're saving America after watching Top Gun and Saving Private Ryan and thinking, I'm going to go and I'm going to save America. I'm going to do what's right in the world. Then they land back in their country. They can't find a house. They can't afford medical bills. They're left freezing cold onto the streets. Why? Because money that could save them ends up going to a foreign government instead. When Americans see this, their hearts genuinely change. And that's why I assume that what happened to me was an emphatic defeat for the Israel First lobby, which is why no hard feelings. I'm looking forward to going to In-N-Out again and, going and checking out there's a really good pizza place in Dana Point in California.
Nice. Well, if you think the pizza in California is good, I mean, I'll give them Mexican food, definitely. As a New Yorker, I'll give them Mexican food superiority, but the pizza is New York City. And Chicago has its own thing going on that's thick.
It's a bit too deep, their pizza. Their thick pizza is not the one.
So
yeah.
It sounds like you have a very good eye, impeccable taste. You're going to like the thin crust New York City pizza. And when you come here next, I will take you around. But are you worried about coming back?
At this moment in time, to be honest, I will wait a while only because the arbitrary nature of the way that these visas are being revoked and the way ICE is detaining people. I mean, let's suppose now you're hosting the World Cup. I don't know why, because for you guys, football is played with the hands, not with the feet. But in any case, you're hosting the World Cup, the soccer World Cup. So does that mean that if a fan from Bosnia unfurls their Palestine flag, in the stadium, when Bosnia hopefully beats, I don't know, like Brazil or somebody, does that mean that ICE is going to go into the stadium and grab that person and throw them into the ICE detention center? What about countries that are coming, from the, what about if, the French national team that has Kylian Mbappe and all these others who sympathize with the Palestinians, does that mean they're going to be detained by ICE as well? And not only that, they put ICE in the airports as well, in the sense, trying to detain them. I think that the way that Marco Rubio is going wild in this regard, partly because, in my opinion, I think Rubio still believes that he needs AIPAC and the Israelis to win the presidential election. And therefore, he's like, whatever the public opinion is changing, keep my head down, get money from the AIPAC, go towards presidency. I'm competing with J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance has upset the Israelis by allegedly being against the war against Iran. Whatever you make of those leaks, what you will. But the point is, I think that at this moment in time, the jungle-like nature of the way your immigration service is operating means let's wait till the midterms and see what happens first.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I was in Cuba in March, and on our way back, I was on a charter that was a Code Pink, it was a Code Pink organized trip, Code Pink and Progressive International. And when we were on our way back, yeah, exactly. So I went on a smaller charter back because some of us stayed an extra 2 days. So we were kind of like easier prey. And so they detained, for a few hours, they questioned us, CBP, Customs and Border Patrol. And I'm white and I'm a U.S. citizen, and all my family has been, many generations. I guess my great grandparents came from overseas. So I'm a citizen. All of my family are citizens. And I have to say, and I hadn't done anything wrong, but I have to say, neither had you. But I hadn't done anything like intentionally illegal in protest of the embargo, right? And I have to say, I was like surprised by how scared I was. I really was. Like, I was totally shut down. And all I was in a room with a bunch of people, and then they took us individually and they put us in a room with mirrored walls. And it really was scarier than I thought. And I kept thinking, like, wow, like I can't imagine what it must be like for people who aren't citizens.
But I'll tell you something funny, Katie. In this, you reminded me of something. So what they used to do to us in the facility was every few days, they wake you up at 11 p.m. or like close to midnight. They bundle you in a van with 14 other inmates, and they take you to the ICE facility in Fresno. I was in McFarland. Fresno is about an hour and a half, 2 hours from the facility. Then they throw the 15 of you in a 7-meter by 6-meter triangular room. So we're all, if we're sleeping next to each other on the hard floor, we're all pretty much next to each other. You know, all the space on the floor is filled. They leave the lights on so that they're shining, so you have no concept if it's day or night or what time it is. Right. And there's a toilet in the middle, which is open, so everybody can see you when you're going to the. Honestly, I want like you think that this is not America, like this is not a land of rights or democracy. Anyway, in the morning they come and bang on the door at 9 a.m. and then they call you one by one. It's a big, massive door. It's like, you know, almost like medieval. They unlock it, whatever. They open the door, Hamdi, and you're like, I've never heard my name expressed in such an ugly way. But anyway, it is what it is. We go out, and then the guy says to me, I tell him, why am I here? They say, well, here's a piece of paper. If you want to sign the confession document again, you can sign it and we'll send you home. I said, but I didn't commit a crime. I've done nothing wrong. Yeah. You're not even charging me with a crime. You're saying that I overstayed. Even the stuff that DHS is saying online is not coming to the courts. They're not even accusing me of anything. They're just saying the visa got revoked. Well, okay, anyway, your court case has been delayed by a week. I said, why is it delayed by a week? They said, because in the original charge sheet, it says that you landed in Orange County, California. I said, I did land in Orange County, California. Yeah, we changed it to you took off from Calgary, Canada. I said, what difference does that make? They said, no, it's one of those procedural things. Because we changed something on the sheet, we have to delay it by a week. But the point that I made, the reason what you reminded me of is this. When you said, you know, at least I'm a citizen. On the 6th or 7th day, the media was in overdrive. British journalists detained for criticizing Israel. British journalists, CNN, BBC, Reuters. And when you're in the facility, you don't see what's happening outside. You're very much detached from the outside world. My wife is telling me, Sami, everybody's talking about your case. But you're like, maybe she's trying to make me feel better. You know? And so then I remember the day I knew that I wouldn't be there for the 6 months that my lawyers told me I would be there for, and that I'd be there for a shorter period was, on the 8th or 9th day, they were taking me to Fresno again to make me sign this document. The guard goes, chains everybody's legs. They make you stand on the side and put your arms out, you know, like against the wall, and then they tie your legs. When they got to my legs, the guy cuffs the legs and he goes, sir, is that comfortable for you? And all of the other inmates are going, hey, amigo, who are you? So I was like, that's a bit of a strange question. So I said, no, it's not. It's a bit tight. You know what? Let me loosen them. You know what? Let me get bigger cuffs for you. The hand ones, no problem. You don't need the hand ones. So all the other inmates who are cuffed, dude, what's going on? Why are they treating you differently? They took us to do the whole experiment again. But on the way back, the warden is, so they make us go 15 of us, one by one, into a room and then out the other room. It's like examination room. In the examination room, the warden goes, Hamdi, the famous one. And from that day forward, all the guards used to come to me and say, like, hey, I didn't abuse you, yeah? Like, I didn't do anything. Like, when you get out of here, like, I did. The reason I mentioned this point, Katie, is this. ICE officials know what they're doing is probably illegal and they could probably get in trouble with it. The reason why they think they can get away with it is because not many people talk about it, not many people talk about their practices, and no people actually go after a lot of the officers by name. When they feel that pressure, like when they were taking me to the airport to go home, they spent 2.5 hours trying to convince me that they're the good guys, that they're misunderstood. They were like, you know, we just got, you know, we didn't mean to treat you this way. The reason why I'm mentioning this point is Liqa Kurdiya, she got out after a media campaign. A lot of these others got out with a media campaign. As long as Americans are ignorant, and this goes back to my point, as long as they're ignorant about what their government is doing, the government will get away with it. As long as they're ignorant, and that's why it's all the more important, whether it's an opportunity with Valentina Gomez or these others, to go get a piece of paper, as my father said, how much does it cost you? Go print the paper out and go and show the people, you know, what's happening. Because when that public pressure comes, that's when you see the government buckle, whether it's Trump, Biden, or those even before him. I have hope in that, at least.
Well, you know, it's interesting because the media, corporate media, said that the last pro-Palestine protester was released. The Washington Post wrote, last pro-Palestinian protester detained by Trump administration released. Liqa Kurdiya, a Palestinian woman detained for a year amid a Trump administration crackdown on protesters last spring, was released on bond. And that's from March 16th. And obviously it's very good that she was released. But Eric Lee, who's an attorney, said, so glad she has finally been released, but the corporate media is erasing Yaqub Vihandre when it repeats the lie that she was the last pro-Palestinian protester detained by Trump. Yaqub was arrested at gunpoint on October 7th, detained since. Don't forget
10
Yaqub.
guns pointed at his face, Katie.
Yeah.
The cars just rocked up in his house in Dallas, burst through the door. He's in his bed sleeping. I saw him 2 weeks before I was detained. And he's there. He's a budding photographer, and 10 guns pointed. He woke up. It's a horrific sight to see. But I tell you something interesting about Katie in this regard. You mentioned the point about corporate media.
Yeah.
So I was with somebody who campaigned for Liqa Kurdiya 3 weeks before she was released. So the sentiment was Liqa's case seems to be a bit hopeless. The judges ruled twice she should be released, and ICE were finding a different loophole, in order not to release her. And not many people were actively talking about Liqa Kurdiya. So anyway, one of the activists, her name is Layla Haddad, well worth your time, by the way, Katie, phenomenal activist. She said to me that she had gone to see a representative in New Jersey because Liqa Kurdiya was arrested in New Jersey. And Layla tells this representative that you have Liqa Kurdiya, one of your constituents. She's been detained by ICE and she's suffering. She had a seizure while she was in ICE and woke up in the hospital, cuffed to her bed. Like, it's barbaric. The representative says to Layla, and Layla will tell the story better than I do, says to Layla, with the greatest of respect, ma'am, if I show you my emails, like, this isn't an issue my constituents are particularly concerned about. No one's calling me about it. No one's emailing me about it. This doesn't seem so. Yeah, I mean, almost like, after that, of course, there was arrangement of phone banks and people started emailing and mobilizing. But that's what I meant, in that talking about these issues leads to actions, leads to people mobilizing. You know what broke my heart in the ICE facility, Katie, was not my situation. It was hearing the stories of the other inmates who'd been there 1 year, 2 years, who'd come to my bed at night and they'd say, hey, amigo, you're going to get out here early. I'm like, how do you know? Because the world hasn't forgotten you. The world's forgotten about us. Here, this is a picture of my mother, my wife, my kids. I've been here 47 years. My kids are American citizens. My wife is an American citizen. I went from a point to update the green card, but nobody cares about us. Nobody writes about us. When you get out, please talk about it. It was heartbreaking, Katie, to see the plight of these inmates who built a life in America and are being abused just because an administration comes in and spreads a few lies, to the people and wants to appear strong on something that in reality is not the real crisis in America today. That's not the reason why your economy is in a mess. Your economy is in a mess for a whole host of different reasons. So with Yaqub, I hope there's people campaigning for him, trying to get him released and out. But it's a difficult, pushing against your bureaucracy is very tough. Very tough.
I have to have someone on to talk about him because his case has received no attention, unlike a lot of other ones. Yeah, that it is really, and it's interesting and noteworthy, of course, that for Trump, Muslims and Mexicans were two of his targets from the beginning, and a lot of lies about similar lies, right? Like rapists, criminals, hate America, all those things. And it reminds, so you have to do one on, you have to do a Mexicans version. You got to go back on Piers Morgan show and do a repeat with your debate partner, Valentina. And I want to know what your thoughts are on this. You have a distinction I've heard you speak about America firsters versus Israel firsters. So talk about that. And in fact, some people speculate that was one of the reasons that you were perhaps singled out. You can watch more of Sami at his new YouTube channel at youtube.com/move Sami Hamdi. And to see the full interview with Sami, where we get into the term America Firster, whether it's good or bad, and how to work with people who may have some really vile, disgusting, offensive political views on some issues, but are good on Palestine, join the Patreon at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And Butch Ware is Associate Professor of History at USC Santa Barbara. He was the 2024 vice presidential nominee for the Green Party and is now running for governor. And he spills a lot of tea in the Patreon, so you'll definitely want to join that. Welcome back to the show, Butch Ware.
Great to be back with you, Katie.
Tell us the latest that you're dealing with from the Democrats as you are attempting to run for governor for the state of California.
Yeah, so I refer to them as the Democrat Party rather than the Democratic Party because they don't want people voting for anything. And whereas Republicans usually try to steal elections after the election, see George Bush and Donald Trump. The Democrats like to try to steal an election before it happens. So they spent $20 million trying to sue me and Jill off of the ballot in multiple states in the 2024 presidential election. And now in the state of California, they are trying to use the Secretary of State's office to eliminate me from the ballot on an absurd technicality that, in point of fact, we demonstrated in court. It's a completely fallacious claim. So here's what they said. What they said is that I left a phone number unredacted on what should have been a redacted copy of my 2024 tax returns. And on the basis of this flimsiest of pretexts, they were going to disqualify me from the ballot in the state of California. And the news on this front today, I'll go back, to explain the full context. The news on this front today is that yesterday we filed suit in federal court because we're not going to take this nonsense lying down. And we are prepared to take this, the legal fight as far as it needs to go, because this cannot stand. Here's what happened. Each candidate is required to submit redacted and unredacted copies of 5 years of tax returns. The unredacted copies are meant to stay on record with the Secretary of State. The redacted copies become public, and you redact information that's private, right? Your personal phone number, your street address, those kinds of things. So apparently what they claim is that there were deficiencies in my redacted copies, that they couldn't explain what these were when they first sent an email saying that we needed to fix this. So March 7th, they sent a message saying, no, not redacted, returns not submitted. And we were like, that's a triple negative. No one knows what you're asking for. We didn't even have to get back to them to clarify, because on March 10th, they sent a new message saying, no unredacted tax return was submitted for these 2 years, for 2022 and 2023. So then we asked for clarification. Well, in your first ungrammatical message, you said that we needed to resubmit 4 years of tax returns, and now you're saying we need to submit 2. So then they wait 2 more days and say, no, you have to submit all 4. Now, mind you, on March 7th, when they initially sent this email, they said, if you don't fix these deficiencies, which again, they have not yet defined, by March 16th at 5 p.m., you will be disqualified from the ballot. The back and forth continues like this for a full week. And finally, on Friday, March 13th, we get an order with which we comply. And we just send entirely new copies of both redacted and unredacted forms. They receive them. They open them Monday, March 16th at 9:17 a.m. And then at 4:50 p.m., they send me an email saying, you left your phone number unredacted on this form, and you will be disqualified from the ballot if you do not correct it in person in the next 10 minutes in Sacramento in hard copy.
Yeah, how did I know it was going to be between 9 and 5 that they were going to not be able to send you this notification?
They gave 10 minutes warning for a document request, but it gets worse, Katie. You think that that's the worst of it. So we file a lawsuit with a writ of mandate to make this stop, right? We file it within 48 hours. Because the voter's guide is supposed to go out at the end of March, right? And so what we're seeing is that this is actually probably not an effort to knock us off the ballot. They know this can't hold up in court. We assume this is just an effort to keep us out of the voter's guide, and we have to file within 48 hours. Otherwise, we won't even get a hearing before the voter's guide is mailed out, because they're trying to knock down our visibility and our name recognition. So we file within 48 hours. We go into court March 26th. And here's where it gets worse. The Secretary of State submitted into evidence all the paperwork that I had filed, right? And our lawyer went through this and was able to demonstrate that they had the correct forms in their possession on time the whole time, that the whole thing was a pretext. And the judge admitted this. It went into the record. He said, so you had correct versions the whole time? And they said, yes, but it's not our job to collate them for the candidate. So literally they were admitting that they had full copies of all of the paperwork, but they were saying that because I hadn't responded the way that they had suggested, that didn't matter, that they actually had the paperwork correct. And then lastly, on this particular point, our lawyer was able to demonstrate in court that they falsified the email thread. They submitted falsified documents into evidence because they went back into the email thread. And remember that ungrammatical email that I mentioned on March 7th? They fixed it. to make it look as though they had issued a proper document request in the first place. And, travesty of all travesties, the judge is completely unmoved. He enters into record that they changed the email thread, enters into the record uncontested that they had the documents in their possession on time the whole time, and nonetheless denied our writ of mandate.
Why would he even do that?
Because he was sent to do a job the same way that paper pusher in the Secretary of State's office was sent to do a job. Their job was to get me off of the ballot. Their job was to make sure that I did not appear in the voters' guide. And there was a very simple reason for this, is that at that time, the leading Democrat candidates, Tom Steyer, Katie Porter, and Eric Swalwell, before Swalwell imploded, right? They were all polling at 10%, and I was polling at 5%. That was in published numbers and they must have had internal polling, because we don't have money to run a bunch of polls. So they must have had internal polling that had me running neck and neck. And just understand what it would do to Gavin Newsom's presidential chances, what it would do to the Democrat establishment nationwide to have a Green Party candidate within 4 or 5 points of the lead in the primary elections in the state of California. So we immediately filed an appeal after they had this absurd ruling. In the Secretary of State's opposition to the appeal, they conceded that they had the documents in their possession the whole time. And now they simply said, well, the voter's guide has already been mailed out. It's too late for us to change anything about it. Wow. So they stopped even arguing that my paperwork was somehow deficient, because we had demonstrated that it wasn't. And now they just simply said, well, it's a big deal to mail out all of these mailers. It's very expensive. And so we can't, change it. The appeal judge, again, in the same Sacramento district, beholden to the same political authorities, denied our appeal without explanation. So no notes, nothing explaining why. It just said writ has been denied. So just to be clear, what Donald Trump does with the Republican Supreme Court, that's child's play compared to what Gavin Newsom does with the judiciary inside the state of California, right? He uses it to take out any kind of political challenges or political opposition. So we never expected to get redress from a court in the state of California, but we wanted to let the process follow through. The appeal was denied at the end of last week, so we filed our federal case yesterday. The federal court case is the place where we expect to get relief. We have a request for a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction that would stop those ballots from being mailed out until a hearing on this takes place. Because there is no world in which voters should be disenfranchised from having their choice on the ballot because the Secretary of State lies and says that there is a deficiency that does not exist. And then after excluding you from the ballot says, well, now that you're off the ballot, it's too late for us to do anything about it.
Wow. So you said that Democrats steal elections before they happen, Republicans steal them after. Can you elaborate on this?
Sure. So the Democrat establishment, as I mentioned, spent $20 million trying to sue Dr. Jill Stein and myself off of the ballot in multiple states. They have actually removed ballot access from the Green Party in the state of New York. So you can't file as a Green candidate in the state of New York. They go to war with anything that might appear to the left of them. And so when I hear, Democrats complaining about Republican efforts to disenfranchise voters, I mean, I have to laugh because they literally spent more money just trying to sue us off of ballots in 2024 than the Stein-Ware campaign spent in total. The Democrat Party is, as my colleague at UC Riverside, Dylan Rodriguez, has called them, he said they're the most effective counterinsurgency institution ever to emerge in human history. Their job is to try to destroy anything from to the left of them from ever seeing the political light of day. So we expected this, by the way, right? I had a war chest set aside for us to pay lawyers. We were ready for that. We responded in timely fashion to all of this chicanery because we knew it was coming. And by the way, it is only just beginning because Our polling has improved since they knocked me off of the ballot, because the media coverage inside the state of California, there's been right-wing media that's covered it. There's been left-wing media that's covered it. There's been local media that's covered it. But none of the national political media outlets have covered this story, because it makes the Democrat establishment look so bad, right? Because it's very clear that if they would resort to this kind of, absurdity, like breaking every rule in the book and being naked about it, not even really trying to cover it up, then it means that they're really afraid. And they should be, because we constitute an existential threat to the Democrat establishment in the state of California.
So I'm going to get back to that. I just want the existential threat, but I do want to add one thing, which was the amazing job that they did in North Carolina with Matt Howe, when they literally, the Democrats got impersonated Green Party officials and called people and told them not to vote for him.
And they called people to tell them to rescind signatures that they had submitted so that he would be disqualified from a ballot. I mean, there is, you have to understand, there is no depth to which they will not sink in order to try to stop Green candidates. And the reason for that, so in the last 3 years nationwide, Greens have won 57% of the elections in which we have run a candidate for office. Those are mostly from mayor down. But what it means is that consistently, when there's not a fire hose of money that the Democrats can, pour into an election, and when there's not mainstream media coverage to overdetermine the narrative, and it's just races that are run on policy and candidate quality, we beat Team Blue and Team Red together. That number, 57%, is nationwide. That number in California in the last 3 years is 79%. So they know that our platforms and policies are things that voters are going to respond to. And what they fear is people hearing this message, seeing the candidate, having the policies explained in, open public forum. I think that the principal reason why they did this was to get me out of the debate that's taking place tonight at Pomona College with CBS Sacramento. And just for context, the same civic organization, APAPA, Asian Pacific American Political Association, they held a debate last September. I participated in that. Everyone that was there perceived the difference in candidate quality. There had been a previous one at SEIU Local 1000 in Sacramento that went so badly for Katie Porter that we found out after the fact that SEIU leadership went to the Democrats and said, you need to get another candidate into this field. That's when Eric Swalwell entered the race, and it helped solve a puzzle inside our campaign, which is we didn't know why the first 4 questions on Eric Swalwell's survey that he sent out when he was trying to decide whether he would run were all about me. And the reason is that everybody in the Democrat establishment saw me dismantle their whole field at the SEIU debate in August of 2025. And that began a concerted effort to make sure that that never happens again. And because I was polling ahead of multiple Democrat candidates, they were going to have to include me in that debate. That debate is going to happen tonight with Matt Mahan taking part, Tony Thurmond taking part, Antonio Villaraigosa taking part. And you're shaking your head because no one's ever heard of any of those people. They are all polling at 1% or 2%. There is no poll in which I am not either even with those candidates or ahead of them. So they would have had to let me debate in a live stream debate that was up and down the state of California, and they already know what happens when I debate these corporate clowns. So this has all been an effort to just try to make a threat disappear from public view.
Wow. And, speaking of the difference between you and the other candidates, here you put out a graphic that's very helpful that goes through the differences. And it says 6 key issues, 5 candidates, 1 choice. Yep. And you show the 5 candidates and supports CalCare, AB 1900. I'm going to ask you about that in a second. Yeah. You're the only one who supports it.
Correct.
Supports abolishing ICE. You, Katie Porter, and Tom Steyer.
They don't support it, but they say that they do.
They say they do. Okay.
Fine, yeah.
refuses donations from all special interests. You're the only one who does that. Yep. Supports reparations and land back. You're the only one. Yep. Supports statewide rent control and social housing. You're the only one. And supports divestment from war and genocide. You are the only one.
Yeah.
And tell us about your opponents, because people obviously know who Katie Porter is, and she's said some really embarrassing stuff recently that was really off-brand for her, which suggests that she is a brand more than a committed person driven by values.
So the first thing, let's start with that bottom box, which is about divestment from war and genocide. Every other candidate that is a viable candidate inside the state of California is a Zionist, period, full stop. Tom Steyer is an anti-BDS person who refuses to call what has taken place in Gaza a genocide. He refused to call it a genocide in a recent interview with Hasan Piker. Katie Porter has taken money from J Street. She made her I Stand with Israel statements. Javier Becerra, similar record on Zionism. So the part of why they're trying to push me off of the ballot is that it is Butch Ware versus AIPAC, J Street, and the Zionist establishment. Let's be clear that Zionist influence is a critical part of why the Democrats are trying to remove me from the debate and from the ballot. With respect to the candidates, Katie Porter is, her candidacy is moribund. She is a failed candidate. She is only in the race right now because of her ego and vanity. She has no path to victory. Her polling numbers have been abysmal ever since the incidents came out where she was screaming at her staff members and trying to walk off the set. And so that was when Eric Swalwell was called into the race. When Swalwell, imploded because apparently he is a serial sexual predator, right? When Swalwell imploded, the Democrat establishment immediately began promoting Javier Becerra as their preferred candidate. And you could see this because the messaging across all of the Democrat influencers was unanimous and simultaneous. They all began pushing Becerra. Until that day, I polled ahead of Becerra in every single poll. And when suddenly the Democrat establishment supported Becerra because Swalwell had been the previous establishment pick, then suddenly Becerra surged in the polling. But let's be clear, Becerra has no actual organic political following of any kind. And this was demonstrated actually in an online poll that was run by a site called Rogue DNC, which is basically a progressive site. So they asked, who do you want to hear from in the debate? This was with reference to an April 22nd debate that happened last week. And they included my name on the list. So they just included Steyer, Porter, Becerra, or Ware. 3,200 respondents, 45% for Ware, 33% for Becerra, 17% for Steyer, 6% for Porter. So the reality is that it's an AstroTurf support for the establishment Democrat candidate. Becerra doesn't have any people, but he's going to get a platform, he's going to get a debate stage, and he's going to have Democrat influencers amplifying his messaging, despite the fact that this man started his campaign with a maximum donation from Chevron. That this is from Chevron. That's his. He said he gave Gavin Newsom an A on homelessness policy in the April 22nd debate. He said in a recent interview that we need Chevron in the state of California. This is somebody that is deep in the pockets of the healthcare industry, of big oil, of big pharma. He's a Zionist. He is a terrible candidate. He's an empty suit for the corporate Democrats. Which brings us to Steyer. Steyer is not the preferred candidate of the California Democrat establishment. Becerra is. Steyer is running for Steyer, right? And there's levels to this, but I'll just start with this. Tom Steyer has donated to his own campaign $122 million. He has paid $38 million for YouTube ads, at $38 million for YouTube ads at the time when they knocked me off the ballot on March 26th. And that 38 million in advertising could only buy him a 5-point lead over me in the polls, right? Because you can't buy a personality and you can't, buy integrity. Those things aren't for sale. But just to be clear, that Tom Steyer is a wildly unpopular and uninspiring candidate who has nonetheless been able to purchase endorsements from a number of different groups, including Bernie Sanders, Our Revolution. But if you want to understand, how weak Steyer actually is, he's donated $122 million to himself. What he's actually raised in donations from human beings, $160,000. We've almost tripled what Tom Steyer's donations are if you only count donations from people that aren't named Tom Steyer, right? And similarly with Becerra has no real life support. He has maximum donations from a bunch of corporations. But when you take that out, our little humble Green Party campaign from San Diego to Humboldt, Central Coast, Central Valley, we've actually, in terms of donations from actual human beings and individuals, we're either running neck and neck with them or we're ahead of them. The only exception to that is Katie Porter. And Katie Porter, despite the fact that she's gotten donations, is falling apart in the polls because she does not have people supporting the campaign. And what I've tried to explain to people over the last month, Malcolm said, the media is the most powerful entity in the world. It will have you believing that the innocent are guilty and the guilty are innocent. And he said that's because they control the minds of the masses. And the thing is that right now, the mainstream media and the Democrat establishment are trying to craft a narrative that there are these leading Democrat candidates that are strong and that the third party candidate is on the outside, off of the ballot and weak. Whereas the actual support that we have built on the ground and in communities far outstrips what any of the leading candidates have done. But unfortunately, CBS LA, CBS Sacramento, the ones that are airing the debate, they are doing the work of silencing this movement. Explain to me how the Democrats get 6 candidates on the debate stage for tonight. The Republicans get 2, and no non-duopoly candidate appears, despite the fact that there are more registered independents in the state of California than there are registered Republicans, and that I'm polling ahead of 3 of the Democrats that are going to be on the debate stage tonight.
Well, speaking of the Democrats and why they see you as an existential threat, and any parties that are outside of the duopoly, as you pointed out recently, the Democrats just killed CalCare, which is the upteenth time they've killed it since they pretended to vote for it in 2006 and 2008 when they knew the governor would terminate it for them. If you believe that a Democrat is going to get you universal single payer, there's a bridge in San Fran I want to sell you. So for those who don't know, what is or was CalCare, and what was it promising to do, and why was it opposed by Democrats?
Universal single-payer health care, get the insurance companies and the healthcare companies out of the way and allow the state to provide the basis of healthcare coverage. This is a wildly popular movement for CalCare in the state of California. Whenever polling is conducted on it, it's a 70-30 or 80-20 issue. 3/4 roughly of the population wants universal single-payer healthcare in the state of California. The Democrats have 3/4 of the state legislature, so there are no Republicans that are stopping them from passing this. And they just killed CalCare. And this time they didn't even, sort of pretend to try to pass it. So there's history here. I mentioned it in that tweet. In 2006 and 2008, the Democrats passed universal single payer in the state legislature because they had a Republican governor, Schwarzenegger, in office that they knew would veto it for them. So they could look plausibly like they were trying to deliver on this thing that they know that the people want, and then point to the bad guys, the Republicans over there that killed it. But after Schwarzenegger left office, it's been 20 years and they still have not passed CalCare. Gavin Newsom ran as the core of his platform in 2022 that he was going to get us universal single-payer healthcare in the state of California. And it was actually part of the argument that the Democrat progressives made, is that Gavin's going to get us universal single-payer healthcare. And once we get it in the state of California, it's going to spread across the nation. We're going to finally get your guys healthcare. In 2022, the healthcare companies laid $2.7 million down on the Democrat Party of the state of California, and Gavin killed the floor vote for CalCare. So they knew that there was pressure on the legislature to vote in favor of this because of its popularity. So they pulled it from a floor vote so that none of those state legislators had to take that hit. This time, they don't even care. They just took the hit. We just killed the bill. We are never going to give you health care because the healthcare companies and the insurance companies will not allow us to. And as I've said many times, who funds you runs you. The problem with the corporate Democrat establishment is that they are in the pockets of these corporations and are absolutely incapable of delivering on the things that everybody inside this state wants. So yeah, you're never going to get health care. And that's why Tom Steyer, he claims to support universal single-payer health care, right? But the thing is that, what did James Baldwin say? James Baldwin said, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. If you believe that after 30 years of playing Lucy pulling the football in front of Charlie Brown on healthcare, that suddenly the Democrats are actually going to step up and deliver you healthcare, then you should get your head examined, because that's never going to happen.
Can you tell us about some of the endorsements you've received, Butch?
Yeah, I mean, we've received endorsements from numerous community organizations, folks that are invested in healthcare, folks that are invested in Palestinian liberation. But we've also received a lot of high-profile endorsements from political figures and cultural figures. I mean, Senator Nina Turner endorsed our campaign early on. And then quite recently, actually, the rapper Vic Mensa did a public endorsement of our campaign. He's the one that does the Orange Tree videos. And he said, listen, I don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils. I'd like to vote for someone who's actually good. And he made a simple case. He's like, Butch Ware is pro-Black, pro-immigrant, pro-working class, pro-trans and LGBTQ rights, and is just a good person that hasn't accepted money from any of these corporations or Zionists. And why can't we vote for that? Similarly, Van Lathan, one of the two hosts of Higher Learning, did a similar endorsement. And what he said in his endorsement is he said, I am going to vote for people that are energetically aligned. And I have to support people that are actually trying to deliver on the things that the people want. And so he said on his show, he said, I'm going to vote for Butch Ware, even if I have to write him in. And that, by the way, is where people are making a mistake. So like one of the endorsements that we got was from the Greater Sacramento Area Muslim Political Action Commission. Our voters are not going to be dissuaded by the Democrat efforts to knock us off the ballot. These are people that are committed to bringing change. So 53% of Muslim American voters voted for the Green Party in the 2024 presidential election. It's something that is not talked about a lot in the mainstream media because they don't want you to know that this major demographic group opted out of the duopoly entirely and voted third party. So up and down the state of California, there are 1 million Muslims in the state of California, right? And that is a group that is going to go out, whether they have to write my name in or not. They're going to vote for the only anti-Zionist that is in the race. They're going to vote for a Muslim candidate who represented their values in 2024 at the top of the presidential ticket, and who is running not on the merits of a 2024 run, but on divestment from genocide now. Divestment not just from killing Palestinians and Iranians, but actually divesting the state of California from its investments in Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, and Boeing, these weapons manufacturers, because our tax dollars should not be used to incinerate children in tents. And this is wildly popular across the state of California, but inside the Muslim community, which has been on the business end of American imperialism for the last 20 years, this is a red line for voters. And so, yes, we are expecting 70% of those Muslim voters inside the state of California to come out and vote for us. Now, what does that mean? voter turnout is very low in these primaries. There were 5.5 million votes cast in 2022 primary. There may be 6.5 million max. To finish in the top two is not going to take more than 15 to 20% of the vote. We're looking at 1.2 million votes that we need to win the election in a state that has a population of 40 million people. I just told you that there are 1 million Muslims in the state of California. And that is a group that's going to vote, in significant numbers for my candidacy, whether they have to write my name in or whether they don't. So we are not backing down from this fight, even if our federal case is unsuccessful. And I want to talk about why the federal case is going to be successful in a little bit of detail, because the details are important. But the point is that we are a long way towards the voters that we need to engage and activate on May 4th when the ballots are mailed out. And we expect to finish in that top two, whether it's a write-in candidacy or whether you check a box on a ballot.
Oh, but Butch, you talked about some really important endorsements, and of course, Vic Mensa, the rapper, but you can't really compete with the endorsement that Tom Steyer got from Juvenile. And let's take a look at this video of Tom twerking, really getting down with Juvenile to Juvenile's hit Back That Ass Up. This is from 2020 at a campaign rally.
Oh, my.
Great interview, so exciting. And again, it just gets even more exciting at the Patreon only interview, which is at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And that is very spicy. Again, some really spicy Hasan Piker related content. And of course, it's not the criticism of Hasan that you hear usually, which is from liberals and Republicans. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And you can find out more about Butch and his campaign at butchware4gov.com. That's butchware4gov.com. Don't forget to become Patreon supporters. Don't forget to like the stream. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss any of these streams or additional streams that we've started to do. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next week. But actually, we'll see you sooner than next Tuesday because we will be doing one of our aforementioned extra streams. So again, subscribe to find out which day we will be doing that. Thank you guys again so much, and see you soon.
I did everything right and they indicted me.
And I don't know what the I'm doing.
Antifa!